Right, we've given everyone a few moments. I'm starting to see the attendees trickle in. The numbers should go up here soon. Very quickly, just want to remind everyone that today's meeting is being recorded. So please, if you can, keep your camera off so that our panelists are front and center. There's no distractions. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to utilize the chat feature here. And during Q&A later in the session, there may be the opportunity for you to come off mute and ask your question. We'll use the hand raising feature once we get there. I'm going to kick it right over to Sharon, our moderator for today's panel, and we will get started. Take it away.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, very excited about the 2021 Future of Work Summit. Really thinking about accelerating AI and data automation. And I am the Assistant Vice President for Digital Transformation at the University of Louisville. However, the focus is on our esteemed guests. We have experts that are going to guide us and think about, what robotic process automation really means in the fourth industrial revolution in data economy. So I'm very excited, and I'll ask for each of them, I'll call on them to introduce themselves and give a brief background, and then we'll jump into kind of some of our moderated questions, but certainly encourage each of you to put in the chat room questions that you have along the way. So first, I'd like to introduce you, and if we can switch the maybe camera on, Josh, to Walid Ali. And he is artificial intelligence and security with Microsoft, and he is joining us from San Francisco today. And I'm just delighted to have you, Walid. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background and what you do at Microsoft. That would be awesome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being with you here today, and looking forward to our discussion and to answering the questions from the audience and interaction with them. I am actually pleased to be with you today. I work for Microsoft driving AI sustainability and security for manufacturing, where our main focus is addressing the ongoing disruption in the industry, addressing the workforce component associated with the disruption. Lastly, but not leastly, working with the industry coalitions to drive our presence in the industry. Again, a pleasure being here and looking forward to our conversation together.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next, we have Ted Marks. He's the Director of Global Application and IT Shared Services Organization at Yum Brands, a global corporation. So Ted, give us your background, please.
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, as you said, I'm with Yum Brands in the IT group here in Louisville. Been with Yum Brands for coming up on 31 years. Always in the application development space. My team these days supports applications that are used by either Yum, the corporation, or shared across our brands. And so that's what led this group to getting into the RPA space.
Excellent, welcome. And last but not least, my dear friend, Sunny Dronawat, and he is the Chief Technology Officer with Plutoshift, among other things. He's an entrepreneur in many aspects, and he's joining us from Palo Alto, California today. So Sunny, maybe a little brief background as well, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. I apologize. I've been having issues with Teams and my camera for some reason. Again, my name is Sunny Dronawat. I have the privilege of working with Sharon on the Louisville Water Company board. I am the Chief Technology Officer for Plutoshift, and it is a startup based out of Palo Alto and with the office in Louisville too. We work on AI and automation and performance monitoring for anything physical, from food industry to manufacturing to beer making, and we've been working a lot on sustainability. Last year in one plant in one of the beer manufacturers, we managed to save 23 million gallons of water by just using AI and ML. So
Well, that's great. I thought, and that also means, I thought you were going to say save 23 million gallons of beer, and I was going to say yes, cheers to that.
No, and I'm a graduate of Speed School and Business School at the University of Louisville.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to, just for the audience, and I see many friends who are very expert in our audience. John Goatee, I've known for years, and there's many, Linda, Samantha. There's a lot of people here that know actually a lot about this, but I just want to give a little brief statement about, what rapid processing automation really is, the technology automation for business processes, from a rules-based, structured, repetitive motion. And, really I see that, as we talk about with our panelists, is upskilling our workforce. But I found an interesting statistic that I just want to throw out to everyone is that according to Gartner, and a lot of us are in IT, that the spending on RPA technology will reach 2.4 billion by 2022. And so, this really inspires many of us in corporations and throughout the world to think about what is some of these repetitive motions, if you will, that we can really enable and arm with software robotics to program specific business processes and really get excited about what some of those processes will be, and to really allow our minds as workers to work on other things, in setting up this whole schema of things. So I'd like to start by asking each of our panelists to give us, more in-depth background of sort of where you've been on this journey, with some examples of how you've seen things applied in, just next steps. And this time I think I'll start with Ted, if you don't mind, and really we'll allocate, 5 to 6 minutes each of you to kind of get a little more in depth about, again, things that you're working on and examples that we can share with everyone. And thanks, Ted, and then Walid, we'll have you next, and then Simon.
Thanks, Sharon. So, yeah, I think you pointed out a good fact there is the technology. So many people use technology, right? This RPA plays into pretty much anybody's role. Especially if you're using a computer, and this is how Yum got into this. We didn't get in to seek to find a way to remove headcount. We got into it to find a way to help all of our employees get rid of some of that repetitive, mundane, error-prone aspects of their job, right? And so what we were looking at, our accounting services group came to us at the end of 2019 and said, RPA, this is a thing we're hearing about. We've got accounting services, which means we have clerks in that are doing different aspects. We think we could automate some of what we do. So we went through your standard process of, let's look at the space, identify a couple of different vendors that we might partner with, do a POC, picked a vendor and say, let's do a pilot. COVID kind of interrupted us from March through about July of last year. So we really didn't get into our pilot until last summer. But it was probably only a few months into it, after having gone through training, having our citizens developers, as they like to call them, in the accounting services group, creating automations along with a small IT staff, kind of working with them, all learning what fits, what doesn't work, how do we do what we're trying to do. It became apparent this is going to work. The technology works, and I think that we can implement it at Yum and see value in it. And so over the course, the second half of the year, if you would, last year, we went through the pilot. We decided to bring on another partner to help us understand how would we move forward with this, because it looks like it's going to be a technology that's going to reach across a lot of different functions. We don't have any skill set in it today. How do we build a center of excellence? What should we do? How could we do it? And they helped us lay out, based off kind of industry standards and best practices, and talking with us and saying, how could Yum do this? Let's lay out what a center of excellence could be. And as we ended last year, going into this year, we had automated a half dozen or so different things for that accounting services team. We had automated a couple of reports for our global finance teams for KFC and Pizza Hut. And we had in our hands a plan of what we could and should do with regards to a center of excellence. And then the biggest part of that plan and what we're doing this first quarter of this year has been defining what's the real demand, what's the pipeline, how much work is out there. Because again, we didn't go into this saying, I've got 1,000 data entry clerks, I want to reduce that staff. We've gone into this saying, how can I take an analyst who spends 2 hours a day pulling data points from emails and reports and systems and putting them into a spreadsheet and manipulating all this data just to get to the point of being creative and of using their talent, right? So that they can be innovative. The first part was not innovation, that was gathering. And what we found is we can help with that. We can automate those things with tools and basically let a bot gather the data, manipulate it to a certain point, then turn it over. Then let our analyst be an analyst, right? And let them take that data, turn it into information, and move things forward. And so just that one single aspect of removing that little bit, we can look around the organization and say, everybody does that. And we can all probably think about our own jobs. How much of our own job is repetitive? Go in. If I could find a bot to answer my emails, it'd be great, right? So that's what we're looking at, and that's what where we're sitting right now. Is we've defined a pipeline that's looking rather large to say there's that much. It's not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but it's a decent value at a decent cost, right? And at the end of the day, if I can save you 10, 15% of your work, that's 10 or 15% more value you could add by doing real analysis for us and being creative and being innovative. So I guess I'll turn it back to Sharon, or I'll turn it back to Walid.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. Thanks, Walid. Maybe some examples and kind of the where you guys have been, where you're going type of philosophy. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you so much, Ted, for you walking us through the whole journey and really robotic process automation (RPA) is something, to Ted's point, that, and I'm going to use his example. We've been using it in even our Excel sheets since we've been using Excel sheets for ages now. Just a quick example of what's been done 25 to 30 years ago. If you started putting a wrong item in an Excel sheet or any of the sheet works that you're working with, a wrong type, the system will tell you back, this is wrong. This is really an RPA working in the background. Really, RPA, simplistically put, it is the process of automating mundane processes, and us as human workers being able to take advantage of that, to use our own intelligence in the non-mundane tasks that we can allocate it to that automation. So in reality, these RPAs are enabling us to focus our energy into the new domain of innovation and disruption, while utilize the computer power to help us with all these back-end processes and tasks that the computer can do on our behalf. With that said, being a part of Microsoft has had a very long-standing path in deploying RPA in almost all the products since the shrink wrap software products, now into the cloud era, where all the tasks that happen in the cloud have an RPA component, and whether it's a cloud buildup or it's a cloud for manufacturing and related to a specific discipline, manufacturing or financial services or healthcare, RPA, understanding what kind of processes can be automated fully through computer power, while us as human beings can focus our energy into what comes on top of that, the intelligent automation, and how to come up with the new disruptions while utilizing this compute power, is really where Microsoft has shined. And we believe it's going to continue with the build-up that we're doing as of today with all the cloud products that we're building. And I'm sure almost all of us are using a lot of capabilities related to Office or either Microsoft 365, Office 365, or Dynamics 365. And all of them, they have a lot of RPA, like the examples that we shared. But on top of that, now, where we see, to Sharon's point, where things are going to go in the future, it is really the convergence between RPA and intelligent automation. And the difference here is very clear. RPA are processes that the computer would do on our behalf. Intelligent automation is really understanding what these processes are, coming up with these new processes. I always like to give the example when we are running a factory floor for producing a specific product. There is an intelligent automation running in the background in manufacturing 4.0 that is always looking at possibilities of failure, cost of maintenance, cost of disrupting the production to do a specific maintenance on the fly. All of these are intelligent automation that are happening in the background. As it starts getting into the main workflow, it gets into the stream of fully robotic processes automations, and it becomes an RPA component. So we start seeing this convergence happening in all the industries, and examples are, as a matter of fact, are around us everywhere. So if you are in the banking and the financial services, I give an example of manufacturing, but if you are in the banking, like what we all do, when you do a simple ATM transaction and reconciling assets or being able to associate your assets inventory together with your transaction at the ATM, there is about it's tens of processes, RPAs happening in the background to reconcile these assets, to come back to you with a real-time value of your assets at that ATM, reconciling your assets at the bank, making sure that if I'm dealing with my, for example, Bank of America in the East Coast, the reconciliation and the backup happening in the West Coast as well in case of failure by increasing redundancy. All of these are RPA accelerated tasks. If I'm looking at insurance industry, for example, and I'm doing a bit of regulatory compliance for a claim, there is a number of RPAs happening in the background to ensure policy compliance and management and underwriting tasks are happening in a timely fashion. So you see all these examples I'm giving you, you scratch the surface, it's all related to ERP, productivity suites, and that's where we're very proud and eager, we from Microsoft side, to help the industries like the examples I shared with manufacturing, banking, retail, healthcare. We can talk more, but I would like to give the mic back to the speakers and get to the conversation discussions.
Well, thank you. And we will circle back around to kind of some specific industry examples, because I think, providing those more and more is allowing us the opportunity to dare to dream and latch on to how we can get started. So, Sunny, if you could debrief us on where you've been and where you're going, in this field, in this arena with your examples, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. And sorry about my camera. It comes in and out.
He's a handsome guy, you all. He'll do a great job. Thank you. We understand.
Yeah, so we've used RPA in many areas. I'll start with marketing. Being a startup, it's always tough to, you have a fixed amount of dollars for marketing. So how do you get leads? So we wrote a small Python script which goes and finds people who are in with the title like Walid's title, VP of Digital, and this process would go in, open a LinkedIn profile, look for somebody with that title, get all their contact information, and save it to an Excel file, and from that Excel file, then it would put it into our CRM tool, and our sales guy could then follow up on them. So that way they didn't have to go and look for who to call. It was just running every night, and we've managed to gather about 44,000 LinkedIn profiles this way. So just in our industry. So that's one example of RPA. It was just written using Python and on a virtual machine using AWS and Azure. So very easy. Secondly, we have used to collect data. When you're dealing with AI and machine learning, the biggest issue is getting to the data. And getting to the data and also tagging it and cleaning the data before you feed it into the machine learning code. There we have again written a lot of Postgres scripts that not only go and fetch data from whether it is a SCADA system or a PLC controller or a digital controller, whether it's an ERP system. Once we put those scripts in place, it automatically either does it every 5 minutes, 1 hour, every 4 hours, whatever you can set it to, and collect the data, clean it, and put it into a database. So that's a script that we call it a polar, but it's a process automation that one person now handles over 60 clients, which would have taken at least 10 people. So that's one automation we have used. The third I would also like to talk about is just once you have the data and you have the AI models, how do you replicate? So you have to, we used it in our CI/CD pipelines. So we wrote scripts. So if you want to add a new site, you just click a button, it creates a database, it creates all the tables, the web server, the certificate, and everything is created automatically in the back end using all the CI/CD tools, whether it's Ansible or Falco, and this way you can deploy fast. So we're able to deploy a client within minutes rather than it would take weeks for us. So these are 3 specific examples where we have used robotic process automation. And for us, the robotic process automation is not to replace people, but today's world, it's so difficult to find people. And the last night's meeting we had, it was all about finding people. Where do we go? And now we're saying, well, we've gone far and wide in Silicon Valley. Why don't we go to Louisville and Columbus and Atlanta and find people? And so now we're moving our RPA implementation more towards HR. So we're going to do the same thing and find people for front-end engineers and contact them saying, hey, are you willing to work for us? So.
Yeah, thank you. And I think everyone would agree, and even many in the audience, again, as I know several of these folks, I see their names popping up as participants. We know that, sort of we have a theme at U of L is analytics all, really from the desktop, to any position.
Sharon, we lost you for a second.
I'm back. I'm back. Woo! I'm getting worried. No, thank you. Sorry. But I was just saying that really analytics all, but also this process automation, is really critical. So with that said, gentlemen, maybe if we could talk more about what are some of the tools that you are utilizing or that you would suggest to utilize and/or resources, and we can put some in the chat as well. And I'll encourage the audience, because this is a very sophisticated audience of, Greg Langdon, we've got Dr. Wright, we've got a lot of people out here that could maybe, we've got a broad spectrum of audience guests, and it'd be great, that we can share some of these tools and resources for our folks. And of course, I'm going to plug our Digital Transformation Center that has all kinds of free training. So I put that in the link that it is free, tons of it, and you can send it to anyone. We're not scraping data. We're not stalking people like Sonny is to get their LinkedIn profile. No, I'm just teasing. He's not. So let me roundtable that. And Walid, could I start with you this time, and just resources and/or suggested reading, things that, again, could get people started in this space that you think would be helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to start with where Sonny ended, and it's interesting that Sonny mentioned LinkedIn, which is yet another part of Microsoft. And we're very proud of the platform, and we're seeing actually tremendous outcome for utilizing LinkedIn with that level of intelligence that love what Sunny put together his pipeline of generating knowledge and understanding through the robotization, through the RPAs that they built in the organization to understand. But kind of building on that, you see the trend, you see the understanding of know your customer. It's a very important field, whether your customer is stakeholders are your students, are returning workforce, are skilling workforce for a specific industry like manufacturing or like healthcare or financial. You will see the assets in today's world helping you from a workforce transformation, from workforce skilling and understanding gaps and issues. You'll see a lot of these tools at your disposal. You just have to be able to put them together. Again, we're very happy from Microsoft's side that LinkedIn is one of the key tools in people's toolbox today to address this question. My point here is RPA is your best friend. Exactly as Sunny said, the issue now is who can help with that new level of intelligence. It is really an opportunity. That's why when people start talking about impact on the workforce, I am very optimistic. It's actually taking the workforce because your know-how of your industry and discipline is very unique. But now if you start building on top of it, with that automation, with this AI angle and all these components that are available today, your expertise and your knowledge becomes very unique in this industry and becomes second to none. This is the opportunity. I actually dislike when people say the negative impact on workforce. I really have a lot of issues with the word negative. I see it as positive, but it's like any other job. When you get a new piece of machinery in your assembly line, you have to get trained on it. It's understandable. You have to get the manual and read it for you to operate it properly. This is no different where we are in today's world. You have to understand the RPAs, you have to understand the automation tools, and break the stigma. AI is your best friend. It is not your enemy. It is really your ability to name the shoe and being able to drive unique value proposition. So kind of to wrap it all, Sharon, I think it's extremely important to understand, know your own space, know the opportunities and how to tie in the tools that are built on top of your existing platform, because your important in the industry would be mundane and your competitiveness would be mundane on how fast and how effective you'll be against your competition catching up with that.
Yeah, and that human element of knowing your industry really gives you the competitive advantage, and the technology just catapults you with that competitive leveraging, that intellect and harnessing that knowledge. So, definitely excited to hear that, and it makes me think about another comment. We'll talk about workforce at the end, but just thinking about really everybody's at the same similar level right now. So it doesn't matter if, I've been in IT for a long time, 30 years. It doesn't matter if you're a newcomer in or if you're upskilling, reskilling. It really doesn't matter because people can jump right in because there's not this historical institutional knowledge about all of this. It's really more of, can you marry those two things that you just said, is the conversion process of automation to the intellect and the intelligence of the automation. So very well said, and I appreciate that comments. What about you, Sunny? Let's talk with you for tools and resources.
Can you hear me, Sharon?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, there is a lot of RPA software that is automation anywhere and UiPath and we've been able to just use, you don't have to buy these software. Maybe Yum can afford it, Microsoft can afford it, but not everybody can afford it, and it's very difficult to find engineers who know this specific software. And one of the option is to use Python programming to write scripts, and they work well. And they worked well for us in terms of automating those tasks. There are tools if you go into like Microsoft Azure, they use something called Databricks, and that can be used also on Microsoft Azure to push data, move data, do ETL, and you can automate some of that processes on cloud environment. Microsoft has created IoT Hub, and Amazon has created Amazon Glue. That these are tools that are available already to connect to their various devices and collect data. So leveraging those tools is where we have found success in terms of implementing RPA at different levels.
Excellent, thank you. Ted, how about you? Resources and tools as well, thank you.
Yeah, I think Sunny hit on some key points of one, computers were invented to do automations. I mean, that's why, and we always have. So those of us who've been in, our careers for decades, right? We've always been automating, right? So these tools like UiPath or Microsoft's or all of them, they have a kind of a niche in that most of them are geared towards the concept of, well, put this tool in the hands of your accountant, your finance person, the functional person. It's easy enough, and I'll put air quotes around that, for them to automate their own. Okay, and that's one of the things we're testing out. And so in that case, it's just another tool, like Walid said. It's just another thing for them to use because their career has also seen automation come into it, right? So I think that one of the things that we're trying to determine is what's the balance. There's a balance in here of what is a tool that we can put in the hands of our functional employees who know their jobs and they can automate. And then where does IT have to come in? And right now we're finding that split at when you want to make something fully automated, unattended, running in the background, things like error handling, right? And support. There's things that's where you start to blend over. And so we kind of envision maybe a two-tier system of you can automate something on your desktop and maybe it can run unattended, but if there's an error, it's just going to tell you. It's like having an assistant, right? They come back and they say, this doesn't work. You go over, you fix it, right? And then there's the stuff you want to kind of promote up to that top tier and say, I've built this. I want you to harden it and make it run like every night, every week, whatever that is, and you support it, right? And so these tools can do that, or I can use my integration tools. I can use my cloud tools. In most major processes, like Walid was saying earlier, it's a combination, right? You want to do processes that maybe a portion is on an RPA tool. Some of it is a cloud build out of something and maybe just an installation of some software, whatever. All of it is automation. And we're looking at the concept of having automation as a service that we provide that really is an umbrella. And RPA tools themselves fall in as one thing under that umbrella. And the nice part I think from a resource standpoint is, and you were saying, Sharon, we're all starting at the same kind of level. And so we're looking at kind of entry-level person, a technologist you bring over, even interns, because if it's supposed to be so simple that anybody can use it, well, great. This is a great way for an intern to come in and get up to speed and start adding value even quicker too.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. The next thing where I want to talk about is thinking about, again, in the future, and we can take questions from the audience if they want to put them in the chat. We'll facilitate some questions and comments. We'll have time. I think we're right on task on time. But I want to hear about what are some things that you guys are thinking about in the future, for this space, if you will. And I was saying to my colleagues right before we came on to this, I said, what are the things you're most afraid of? And usually if it's fear that's driving something, that might be where no one else dares to go. And so you don't have to push the envelope on that side, but I want to challenge you to really reveal to us, what are some of the things you're most excited about, and they don't have to be fear related, but where do you think, again, we can go? And with that, I'll start with Walid, if you'd be so kind to start us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think with the process of automation in general, I'm less worried about the automation, but I'm more worried about the bad agents, the malignant agents, and their disruption of the system. But quite honestly, this is very broad and is not only unique to RPA. Will be unfair to say that. Actually, I'm more optimistic about RPA's ability to counter cyber attacks and counter state-based threats and cyber terrors and others. Our ability to defend in that space, I think, is far more solid and powerful from technical side than my own worry about the non-technical based scare. But with that aside, and I'll come back to the cybersecurity because it's really the biggest challenge for us in the coming era for automation. But I'll come back to this. But let me touch on the point again. I want to double down. Automation and utilization of AI is one of the best tools that we can use in our future, in our near future, and our far future as well. So I'm very optimistic about this. I keep on saying this. I always kind of draw a line in the sand. Automation is human's best friend. It's no different than hundreds of centuries where the muscular power was the only indication of how good you have a society's welfare. Today is actually no, it's the intelligence we can build into our machines to help us with that. So with that optimism, let me go back to the cyber threat. I think that's the issue in hand that we have to deal with. And it will be a combination between working with enterprise, government, federal and local, and national, and also nations-wise, to build the right paradigm for controlling bad agents. And bad agents come in different shapes and forms. And us at Microsoft, being one of the biggest software vendors and cloud providers, we know very well that type of threat, and we know how to counter it. But we also work very closely with governmental bodies and agencies and international agencies as well to counter the threat that quite honestly threats our own species as human being and will cause some disruptions when it happens. But with that said, it's the future is bright. We're very optimistic about our ability to contain that threat, but let's not be naive about it because the threats will keep on evolving. With that said, we'll also continue evolving our own defense mechanisms to keep us all safe and effective in the coming future.
Yes, thank you. Bless you, Ted. I think that was a sneeze from some sinus, probably. So we have a beautiful pollen-ridden day today. Ted, if you'd be so kind to go next.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the future, and earlier you said that the fear, what scares you. I'll circle back to kind of where we started. I think, Yum has always valued our employees, our resources, right? Our culture is built around that. If you have the best people, you get the best results. You can be the best company, right? From restaurants to franchisees to corporate employees. Well, the same goes then for how do you harness that creativity, right? How do you harness the greatness of each person? And part of that comes from, well, don't chain them down, if you would, with a lot of manual, repetitive things that could and should be automated. Freeing people up to be able to focus their creativity, their talent in their area is the best defense against being leapfrogged by some other company, right? Some disruptor who innovated better, faster than you did. If you've got the best people, the only reason that could happen is because you didn't get them focused and allow it. So I think that when it comes to these tools or just automation as a whole, it's all geared towards making your resources as great as they could be, right? By giving them those opportunities.
Yeah, well, I love that. I love that you said that because again, it's back to, really what a lot of companies' core values are, and that is their people. And we truly do mean that is the intellect and the ingenuity and the innovation comes from people. And that's exciting to hear, and it's where a lot of corporations again are really saying, let's enable and arm our people so that they can go forth and be innovative and competitive and think of these really clever nuances, out in the world marketplace. And that gets me really excited, obviously, just from the whole technology industry perspective right now where we are. Let me turn it over to Sunny if you have any commentary. I know you're having a little tiny bit of technical issue. No problem at all.
Yeah. So like Walid said, security is always an issue. There are bots everywhere. They're doing crazy stuff. And we have to be aware of that. There have to be some rules and regulations around it to protect intellectual property, to protect information. And that's going to be the key thing. Then there are legal issues that folks are still trying to understand. What can you do? I mean, can we go on LinkedIn and get all the names? Is it legal? And those are one of the things that has to be hashed out. But I think overall the RPA is there to help people. I always tell folks when I do a sales presentation and I tell us about our company, is we're not here to replace the operator. We are like that Iron Man suit, the helmet, to augment the person's strengths and give them information instantly. So it's that Iron Man suit that is AI, RPA, automation combined together. I think the adoption of RPA is going to be not because companies will automate these tasks and they see savings on it. A lot of companies have done a lot of stuff on Six Sigma and Kanban and all and taken out a lot of efficiencies already and increased the efficiencies and taken out a lot of bottlenecks. But finding people is going to be the biggest challenge. I was reading a study where it says that China will be short of 20 million people who can do technology stuff. So the net deficit will be 20 million people just in China. So where are we going to find these people? We'll have to use robots. So that's where the adoption is. It's not going to replace jobs, but I think it's going to create more jobs, and it's a domino effect. As you create more jobs, you have to find more people, but you can't keep. We're not producing enough people, so and training them. So it's a cycle, a vicious cycle.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and again, looking at from a EEOC equity, diversity situation, and thinking about what else can we do, how else can we do it, to reach out to people. And again, it's not a sales pitch for the University of Louisville, but we've been doing many free seminars. We've been doing Build a Bot, which is a free artificial intelligence, no code out in the community. We've done hundreds of people trying to just get in their hands to start thinking about that this is the path, that they could be on. And I know all of us, here, and especially with this entire conference, are really focused on that. I don't see any questions in the chat room, but forgive, somebody help moderate if there is something there that I've missed. Okay, Ronald's got one. He says, how often have the panelists seen RPA projects dropped because they weren't large enough? Good question. Thank you. Who would like to take that? Who'd like to field that question?
I'm more than happy to start with that.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sure it's my pleasure. Well, thank you for the question. I think fundamentally the RPA impact, like any new process, when you inject it into any workflow, there is the point of diminishing return and there is the inflection point where the automation would bring in value versus their lack of, depending on the degree of scale. So scale is extremely important, and securing that scale based on the demand and based on understanding a lot of the other angles. I refer back to the example that Sunny gave at the beginning of the call. There is a reason why he's harvesting the data to see the amount of leads, and he's tracking it on daily basis, and he's using that automation to give him the right indicators whether the RPAs that he's utilizing make sense or not. So there is always that angle of, and that's where your understanding of your discipline, or industry becomes second to none. How to tie in the automation? Have you really reached the inflection point where the automation would bring in the right ROI for your deployment and implementation, and kind of connecting all the dots together? And very appreciative Louisville and hosting us here today. It becomes a key in teaching and educating, and we're very excited to partner with universities like what we're doing today and kind of disseminate that knowledge. New tools and new automations are only as useful as you put them in the system that has requirements for them. If not, becomes an overhead that means very little for you. So with that said, I think it's always good to understand these trade-offs for us to make the right decision in the value of automation.
Yeah, excellent. And Dennis Keebler has asked, how prevalent do you think will low-code or no-code tools, Unipath, become? And my colleagues that are on this call, my other professor colleagues, they're going to laugh at this question because they know that I love no-code and tools like this. So I did not plant this question, but who would like to respond to this one? Ted, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, well, because I think that's where we are right now, and I think that it's a good question. My guess is that they will be very prevalent, because I think you're trying to find whatever that right balance is between, again, how do I do technology without having to necessarily have a quote technologist? How do I have my accountant, my finance, my whoever? How can I give them the tools to automate their own stuff? And then, you know, because not everybody's going to have a big enough staff, or as Walid said, you may not, I want to automate one thing. Well, okay, I can't put a whole, you know, it doesn't hurdle because it's too much cost. But as the tools get better, Microsoft has made a lot of advances in the past year and a half, which usually tells you they see a future in this too. And I think it will, in a few years' time, probably just become one of them things that it's just out there, right? It's a thing that people do, and we don't really call it out as much. Just like you were talking about, you know, people write Excel macros, but we don't go around talking about the fact we wrote Excel macros. It's just because it'll just be part of what people do. Now, that does mean that there is a certain level of technicalness, to make up a word, that all jobs have, right? I mean, and I think we see that now with younger generations growing up with technology. They have the ability to kind of expect that I'm going to have to do certain technical things in every job, which maybe wasn't the way when I was going to the University of Louisville, right? So I think you're going to see these types of tools, the no-code, low-code might be a little better description, be very prevalent in every field.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better than what Ted, if you remind me, Sharon, jumping here, just to close on that, couldn't have said it better with the explanation, the example, and the journey that Ted described. And us from Microsoft being a player in the cloud space, Azure Power Apps, Azure Automate, and the value for you to tie them into your RPAs that are built on top of Dynamic 365, Office 365, becomes actually even the cost of your innovation, the cost becomes minimal because it is pay as you consume. It's the value of software as a service. When it becomes combined with RPA, it becomes second to none, even the cost for your organization. I love the example that Sunny and I actually threw in at the beginning of the call. He's harvesting almost 100,000 leads on daily basis. And based on that, with the ability, if you tie it in to meet your ongoing demand business needs, and with your low-code and no-code, your ability to bring value to the business becomes second to none. But to Ted's point, you have to scale your workforce. You have to invest with the local academic institutions, and you have to empower your workers and your students for them to take advantage of this new knowledge in their space.
Thank you so much. Mayoresh, I just want to acknowledge your comment in the, and apologize if I butchered your name, your comments in the chat room that you're saying it will depend on how organizations can scale their training resources and deployment processes internally for that low code, no code tool adoption. Absolutely. And, again, the executive sponsorship and support that, this is the way that we're embracing the future, and this is how all people in the workforce will be enabled and armed. And then Steve Barron asks, he says, how do you plan to address the skills shortage in RPA and AI technologies to continue to meet the needs of business and value as value continues to be realized? Now, again, it's not a sales tool for University of Louisville because we're doing it totally free, but we are doing free events like the Build a Bot. We're doing all kinds of links that we've curated from Google, Microsoft, IBM skills that are available in the link that I put in the chat room. And we don't capture your data. We're not scraping and harvesting, to be honest with you. We are trying to provide that as part of our university mission. And so with that said, I think if someone has a comment on that, and then we'll move to close.
I can take that.
Thank you, Sunny. Thanks.
One of the things you have to address it at various levels. I know University of Louisville is doing a good job at a college level. We also have to start at school and high school and middle school level. An example would be, Manual High School does the science fair. So maybe in next coming years, they might have a section on RPA and automation. Right now, they have environmental engineering, they have mathematics, but maybe there is a whole section on RPA where kids write these bots and then compete for the Intel prize. So that way we educate at a young age. And in companies, folks have to use not just from an ROI perspective, automation, but how can we service the customer better, or how can we improve customer satisfaction, or how can we deliver something faster and better for the customer? And that should be the driver for RPA, not just looking at ROI at all the times. So. And letting people build bots or build tools that will help with those processes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, not to digress, but we are trying to move towards JCPS is doing Build-A-Bot sessions and things like that. And we just have to proliferate that, around everywhere and really get more people to be able to do all those things. I want to move to one final commentary just in the last few minutes. It's kind of a curveball that I didn't say to you guys, but it makes me sit here and think, that this advanced audience, and I see people moving off, but real quick, how does this leverage into blockchain? It's really my question. Sorry, if I was in the audience, that's what I would be asking. And then we'll conclude and thank our guests. So real quick, who wants to handle that one real quickly?
Yeah, happy to jump on this very quickly. And in the spirit of the few remaining minutes, fundamentally, the value of blockchain is combined with the value of information and automation at the edge and at the cloud. It's really the distributed AI environment that we're facing with today. While we're on the call, my iPhone is really a distributed AI at the edge, looking at my messages, bringing me the right cues. But in general, the notion of distributed data assets requires the management of these distributed ledgers. And really, blockchain would enable us to bring value. Us at Microsoft, we saw huge value for blockchain in retail and the financial industry and asset management, even in insurance. So there are a lot of use cases, and I invite everyone to jump on what we talk about in blockchain or Microsoft. But let me also connect, because I am very passionate about workforce transformation and understanding where such a new discipline like blockchain, this is going to take off in addition to many other disciplines. So to the question that we heard earlier, how can we get skilled? Invest in your own equity. Your own skill set is your own equity. It's second to none. It's great to take advantage of great university programs, Louisville University, and the hackathon they built, but invest in your own. Go figure out what the folks at Azure are offering you and working with you. And blockchain, I'm sure, will be one of the things that will attract your attention to what comes in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're out of time, but I want to really thank our guest and you know, bravo. I think all four of us could sit and talk for days, you know, because, you know, we're so passionate about this. I want to thank our audience and attendees, and have a great summit. And again, thank you, esteemed guests, for sharing your knowledge and expertise and supporting the future of work. We're grateful for your insights and excellence and passion for the industry. So with that, we'll conclude. I'll adjourn in just a minute, but I see people jumping off to go to the next session. So we'll adjourn 2 minutes early so they can take a bathroom break. How about that?
Yeah, and I want to thank Sharon for asking the right questions and the tough questions. And Sharon, you did a great job. So thank you.
Much. Well, you're kind to say so, and I'll see you in the next meeting, Sonny.
Yeah.
So, yes, I appreciate it so much. So
Thank you.
we'll give just a moment here to log off. I think we're down to about 20 folks. If anybody wants to put any special thanks to our colleagues. And Walid and Ted, so great to meet you and interact with you guys. And really, it's not a fake passion that we all have. It's our life's work, you know, that we're so excited about seeing people just get empowered by being able to have technology. And I'm not just saying this because you're on the phone, Walid, but we did just sign up as a Microsoft LinkedIn Learning. And so we're tying that all together. Yes, we're tying that all together. And then we embed the Microsoft certificates all across campus. Our president, Dr. Benapude, has given us marching orders that every student will graduate with some kind of certificate in technology industry efforts, you know, whether it's blockchain or SQL or Google Analytics or whatever.
Sharon froze.
Yeah, we lost Sharon, but
I guess that's the signal to end. When the moderator freezes, it's time to end the discussion. Well,
thank you, guys.
Nice to meet y'all.
Thank you, Ted.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, I'm frozen now. That meant shut up, Sharon. It meant need to end the conversation. So with that, my gratitude and thank you all, and talk to you soon.
Likewise.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.